Hello, I'm Afreen Tamboli, a student of Elite Institute of Pharma Skills. I am here to demonstrate my presentation on the topic clinical trial phases. Contents are as follow. What are clinical trials? Who are involved in clinical trials? Why are clinical trials performed? Phases of clinical trials are four: Phase 1 clinical trial, Phase 2 clinical trial, Phase 3 clinical trial, and Phase 4 clinical trial. The definition of clinical trial. The ICH-GCP defines clinical trial as any investigation in the human subject intending to discover or verify the clinical, pharmacological, and other pharmacodynamic effects of an investigational product, or to identify any adverse reactions to an investigational product, or to study the absorption, distribution, metabolism, and excretion of an investigational product with the object of ascertaining its safety or efficacy. What are clinical trials? Clinical trials are the research studies that explore whether a medical strategy, treatment, or the device is safe and effective for the humans. Clinical trial are the stepwise process in which experiment is done on the human beings. These studies also shows medical approaches to work the best for certain illness or the group of people. It helps in advancing patient care. The clinical trial is the mainstay for bringing out new drugs to the market. The four possible outcomes of the clinical trials are as follows: the positive trial, non-inferior trial, inconclusive trial, and negative trial. The positive trial shows that the treatment in which large beneficial effects are seen and they are superior to the standard treatment. In non-inferior trial, the new treatment is equivalent to the standard treatment. Inconclusive trial shows that treatment is neither clearly superior nor clearly inferior to the standard treatment. And negative trial shows that new treatment is inferior to the standard treatment. Let us see that who are involved in clinical trials. The patient and healthy volunteers are involved in clinical trials. Clinical pharmacologist, clinical investigator, and team qualified and competent. Institution where trials are held, approval are required. Ethical review board or institutional ethical committee, sponsor, regulatory authorities. Why are clinical trials performed? To provide the evidence that the drug that has been discovered is safe and effective, and this evidence can be given through the clinical trials. Before clinical trials, preclinical trials are done. Acute, subacute, and the chronic toxicities are studied in the preclinical trials. Through the clinical trials, we can know that therapeutic and the pharmacokinetic action. This is the chart of phases of clinical trial. There are four phases of clinical trial: Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3, and Phase 4. Before the Phase 1, the Phase 0 is conducted. Phase 0 is called as Exploratory Investigational New Drug Study, in which first study in the patient to see how the body metabolizes the drug. Phase 1 is called as Human Experimentation Trial, in which study of the small number of the patient to evaluate the safety and dosing. Phase 2 is called as Therapeutic Exploratory Trial, in which study of the more patients to assess drugs the effectiveness and further evaluate safety. Phase 3 trial is called as Therapeutic Confirmatory Trial, in which the study is done with the largest number of the patient to confirm the drug is effective and safe, and they compare the drug with the current treatment. Phase 4 is called as Post-Marketing Surveillance Study. In these, the large population of the large number of the patient being treated. Phase 0. Phase 0 is called as Exploratory Investigational New Drug Studies, or the Pre-Phase 1 trial. The exploratory investigational drug studies and the pre-phase studies are used in a research to describe how the drug is processed in the body and how it affects to the body. A very small dose of the drug is given in early phase, on or phase 0, which have no therapeutic or the diagnostic goals. For example, screening studies and microdosing studies. Before starting phase 1, phase 0 is conducted. As clinical trial is done in human beings, it involves a lot of risk. Phase 0 provides a kind of confidence to the researcher to try the new entity in the humans. This phase does not focus on the therapeutic value of the investigational product, but on identifying the viable investigational product and eliminating ineffective ones. This phase saves resource, time and effort. The objective of phase 0 is to ensure whether the investigational product will work as expected or not in the human body due to the unknown risk associated with the investigational product. Very small amount of the product is administered in small group of the participants for the very short period. Phase 1. Phase 1 is called as human experimentation trial. Phase 1 studies are done to find the best dose of the new drug with the fewest side effects. Phase 1 trials refers to the first introduction of the experimental drug into the human. Blinding and control are open label. Both the patient and individual volunteers and the doctor know about this trial. The purpose of this phase 1 is to know the maximum tolerable dose and determine the safety and the dosage. The phase 1 shows that and is conducted in small number of the participants, typically 20 to 100 volunteers or the patient with the targeted disease. This phase may take several months for the completion. The length of study is up to several months. The main objective of this phase 1 is to assess the safety profile of the investigational product in the human body. This phase also determines the pharmacodynamic and pharmacokinetic of the compound. Tolerance is also assessed in this phase, and approximately 70% of the drug moves to the next phase. Phase 1 studies also carried out in the two stages, single rising dose and the repeat dose administration. In the single rising dose, each volunteer given a single dose of the placebo. An initial dose and route of administration decides from the existing preclinical data. 2 to 4 volunteers receive the placebo and 6 to 8 volunteers receive the drug under study. The test and examination is done with the prior to the start of drug administration at the interval during the study. For example, 2, 4, 8 and 16 hours before discharge and 4 to 10 hours after dose. Repeat dose administration. The repeat dose administration starts after the single dose administration. Results assessed. Placebo, drug, given repeatedly for the 1 or more weeks. For example, antibiotics given for the 5 to 7 days and anticonvulsant tested for 4 weeks or more. Interval between doses is usually one half life. And the study design is typically dose escalating studies. Kinetic data are obtained from blood and the urine sample collected after the first and the last dose. Phase 2. Phase 2 is called as Therapeutic Exploratory Trial. This phase is exploratory phase as it explores the efficacy and side effects of the experimental product. Phase 2 trials are done to gather the preliminary data on whether a drug works or effectiveness in the people who have the certain condition or the disease. It means that in phase 2, the participants which are enrolled in the trial have some kind of the disease condition. This phase have large number of the participants involved are typically about 50 to 500 and length of the study is from several months to the 2 years. The count of disease participants in this phase may go to the few hundreds and approximately 33% of the drug move to the next phase. The phase 2 is classified in the two types, phase 2A and phase 2B. Phase 2A considered in the early phase and phase 2B considered in the late phase. Phase 2A have pilot and phase 2B have pivotal. Phase 2A involve in 20 to 200 volunteers and phase 2B involve 50 to 300 volunteers. Phase 2A have non-multicentric and phase 2B is multicentric. Phase 2A is the single blind comparison with a standard drug and phase 2B is a double blind comparison with the placebo or the standard drug. Phase 3. Phase 3 is called as therapeutic confirmatory trial. Phase 3 trials are done to gather more information about drug safety and effectiveness by studying different populations and different dosages and by using the drug in the combination with the other drugs. So, basically in phase 3, what is done? Safety is assessed and its efficacy assessed, but different type of the populations are used and different doses are used and drug is also used with the combination of the other drug. In phase 3 trial, the candidate product is studied in 300 to 3000 patients with a targeted disease. The length of this large scale study is generally 1 to 4 years. Through this phase, researchers gathers more information about the safety and efficacy of the product and also determines the dose response relationship. As this phase is done on the large group for long duration, it also helps in investigating the rare side effects. Phase 3 studies provide significant information about risk benefit balance of the investigational product. Once the successful outcome are achieved from the phase 3 studies, manufacturer submits new drug application to the FDA. This document is requested from the manufacturer to the health authority for approving the investigational product. FDA reviews all the details related to the investigational product very minutely, and if FDA finds all required information about satisfactory and approves the candidate product. Phase 4. Phase 4 is called as post-marketing surveillance study. Phase 4 trials are done after the FDA has approved the drug and is on the market. These trials gather additional information about the drug safety, efficacy, or optimal use. Hence, after the phase 3, if the drug is approved to the effective and safe, it is launched in market and people can use them, and after that phase 4 start. Due to the limitations of the clinical trial, it becomes imperative for the manufacturer and regulators to continue the collecting information about the safety and efficacy of the newly launched product. Hence, phase 4 study is done. This phase is concerned about collection of the additional information about the safety and efficacy of the marketed product. This phase is also helpful in identifying the rare adverse effect. Phase 4 may redefine the dosing recommendation and risk-benefit relationship, understanding the in various population. The movement from one phase to another phase depends on the outcomes of the previous phase. There can be many changes in between the whole clinical trial process. Sometimes the trial can be stopped or terminated due to the unfavorable or favorable condition. Thank you.